They say you can't choose who you fall in love with. But what happens when the person who makes you feel most alive is the one person you're never supposed to love? I'm Ava, and this is the story of how a rainy autumn night changed everything I thought I knew about love, courage, and the price of living your truth. This is the story of how my stepmother became the woman who saved my life, and how together, we learned that sometimes the most forbidden love is the one worth fighting for. This is my story, and it begins with a storm. The rain pounded against the window of our Connecticut home, a relentless drumbeat that mirrored the storm raging in my heart. I stood there, 22 years old, at the edge of my world, watching everything I thought I knew about love begin to unravel. I never imagined that my stepmother would be the one to change my life, but that Friday night in late autumn, Elena did exactly that. The air smelled of wet leaves and regret. I had just come home from Yale for the weekend, my final semester looming over me like a guillotine waiting to drop. My father was away, as usual, on another business trip to some city I couldn't bother to remember. The house felt too big, too quiet, except for the rain and the faint hum of jazz drifting from the living room. Elena was there, as always, a quiet presence who had slipped into our lives 3 years ago after my mother's death. She was 38, with a warmth that could light up a room and a sadness she hid behind her hazel eyes. I didn't know then that her sadness mirrored mine. I stood in the kitchen, staring at the coffee pot like it held the answers to my unraveling life. My girlfriend Sarah had broken up with me 2 weeks ago, leaving me with a hollow ache and a million questions I couldn't answer. I'd come out to my father at 19, expecting acceptance, or at least understanding. Instead, all I got was his cold silence and Elena's quiet support. Now, alone in that house with her, I felt the weight of my loneliness like a stone pressing against my chest. Ava. Elena's voice broke through my thoughts, soft but steady. She stood in the doorway, her chestnut hair loose around her shoulders, a glass of red wine in her hand. You've been hiding in here all night. Want to talk? I shrugged. My usual defense mechanism. Talking meant admitting how lost I felt. How Sarah's departure had left me questioning everything about myself. My identity. My worth. My future. But Elena didn't push. She never did. Instead, she gestured toward the living room, where a fire crackled in the hearth. Come sit, the rain's too loud to think straight. Reluctantly, I followed her. The living room was her domain, bookshelves stuffed with novels, a record player spinning Ella Fitzgerald, and a worn leather couch that smelled faintly of lavender. She sat cross-legged on the floor, her jeans slightly frayed, and patted the space beside her. I hesitated, then sank down, the warmth of the fire seeping into my skin. You're not yourself, she said, her voice low, like she was coaxing a secret from the universe. I know what heartbreak looks like, Ava. I've seen it in the mirror. Her words hit me harder than I expected. Elena never talked about her past. Not really. I knew she'd been married before my father, but the details were a mystery shrouded in silence. My curiosity stirred, but so did something else, something I couldn't name. What do you mean? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. She took a sip of wine, her gaze distant, as if she were looking through the walls into another time. Before your father, I loved someone. A woman. Her name was Clara. The confession hung in the air, heavy and fragile, like a glass ornament about to shatter. My breath caught. Elena, my stepmother, the woman who had been a steady, composed presence in my life, had loved a woman. The revelation was a spark in the dark, illuminating corners of my heart I hadn't dared to explore. What happened? I asked, leaning closer. The firelight flickered across her face, casting shadows that made her look both vulnerable and beautiful. She left, Elena said simply, but her eyes betrayed the pain beneath those two small words. We were young, and the world wasn't kind to women like us. She chose safety. I chose survival. I didn't know what to say. My whole life, I'd seen Elena as the perfect stepmother, kind, composed, always there when I needed her. But now, she was something more. She was a woman who'd loved and lost, just like me. A woman who understood what it meant to hide your true self from the world. The room felt smaller suddenly. The space between us charged with something unspoken, something electric. I wanted to ask more, to understand her, to know everything about the life she'd lived before she became part of mine. But the words stuck in my throat. Instead, she reached out, her hand brushing mine. It was brief, probably accidental, but it sent a jolt through me that I felt down to my bones. You're stronger than you think, Ava, she said, her voice soft but firm. Heartbreak doesn't define you, it shapes you. I wanted to believe her, but the ache in my chest said otherwise. We sat in silence, the jazz filling the gaps between us, and I wondered how someone so close could feel so far away. That night, as the rain slowed to a drizzle, I realized I was seeing Elena for the first time not as my stepmother, but as a woman who'd lived a life I was only beginning to understand. The days after Elena's confession blurred into a haze of questions and stolen glances. I couldn't stop thinking about her, about Clara, about the life she'd left behind, about the way her hand had brushed mine. It wasn't just curiosity anymore. It was something deeper, something that scared me more than I wanted to admit. I started noticing things about Elena I'd ignored before. The way she laughed, soft and unguarded when she thought no one was watching. The way she tucked her hair behind her ear when she read, her brow furrowed in concentration. She was beautiful, not in the polished way of magazine covers, but in the way a storm is beautiful, raw, unpredictable, alive. And I hated myself for noticing. My father came home that weekend, his presence like a cold front sweeping through the house. He was all sharp edges and clipped words, his attention fixed on his phone or his laptop. Elena tried to bridge the gap, her smile strained as she asked about his trip, but he barely looked at her. I watched from the sidelines, my stomach twisting. How could he not see her? How could he not see what I was starting to see? One night, after he'd gone to bed, I found Elena in the backyard, sitting on the wooden swing we'd built when I was a kid. The fairy lights strung through the trees cast a soft glow, and she looked like she belonged to another world, a world where pain didn't exist, where love was simple. I grabbed a blanket and joined her, the autumn chill biting at my skin. Couldn't sleep? She asked, her voice gentle. I shook my head. Too much noise in my head. She nodded, like she understood. Want to tell me about it? I didn't know where to start. The breakup with Sarah still stung. A wound that wouldn't heal. But it wasn't just that. It was the way I felt around Elena now, the way my heart raced when she smiled, the way I wanted to know everything about her, her past, her dreams, her fears. It was wrong, wasn't it? She was my stepmother. But the more I tried to push the feelings away, the stronger they grew, like trying to hold back the tide with my bare hands. Instead of confessing, I asked, "Do you ever miss Clara?" Her expression softened, but there was a flicker of pain in her eyes. "Every day," she said. "Not because I want her back, but because she was part of who I am. Loving her taught me what it means to be brave." "Brave," I echoed, my voice cracking. "I don't feel brave. I feel lost." Elena turned to me, her eyes searching mine. "You're not lost, Ava. You're finding your way. It's messy and it hurts, but it's yours." Her words were a lifeline, but they also stirred something dangerous inside me. I wanted to tell her how I felt, how her presence made my world feel less empty, but the words felt like a betrayal of her, of my father, of myself. Instead, I leaned closer, the blanket slipping from my shoulders. Our knees brushed, and neither of us moved away. The air between us crackled, heavy with unspoken truths. I could smell her perfume, lavender, and something warmer, like sandalwood. My heart pounded so loud I wondered if she could hear it. "Elena," I started, my voice trembling. But before I could say more, she stood abruptly, the swing creaking beneath her. "It's late," she said, her voice tight. "We should go inside." I watched her walk away, the fairy lights casting shadows across her back. My chest ached with everything I hadn't said, everything I wasn't sure I could ever say. That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering how love could feel so right and so wrong at the same time. The weeks that followed were a tightrope walk between longing and restraint. I threw myself into my studies, hoping the chaos of exams and final papers would drown out the chaos in my heart. But Elena was everywhere. Her laughter in the kitchen, her voice humming along to jazz, her quiet presence in every corner of the house. I was falling for her, and it terrified me. I tried to avoid being alone with her. I stayed late at the library, took extra shifts at the campus bookstore, made excuses to visit friends, but every time I came home, there she was, a presence I couldn't escape, didn't want to escape. One evening, I came home to find the house dark, except for a soft glow from the dining room. Elena had set the table for two, candles flickering between plates of homemade lasagna. My father was gone again. Another business trip, and the intimacy of the scene made my pulse race. "Thought we could use a real dinner," she said, smiling as she poured wine into 2 glasses. "No takeout tonight." I sat across from her, the candlelight dancing in her eyes, making them look like liquid gold. We talked about everything, my classes, her love for classic literature, the way the world felt too big and too small at the same time. It was easy, too easy, to forget who we were to each other. For a moment, we were just Ava and Elena, 2 women sharing a meal. sharing pieces of themselves that we'd kept hidden from the world. But then she asked, her voice soft and careful. Are you okay, Ava? Really? The question pierced through my defenses. I wanted to lie. To say I was fine. But her gaze held me captive. There was something in her eyes, concern, understanding, and something else I was afraid to name. I don't know, I admitted, my voice barely steady. I feel like I'm drowning, and I don't know how to stop. She reached across the table, her hand covering mine. This time, she didn't pull away. Her touch was warm, grounding, electric. You don't have to stop, she said softly. Sometimes you just have to let yourself feel it. Her touch sent shivers through me, and I couldn't look away. The air was thick with everything we weren't saying, everything we couldn't say. I wanted to lean across the table, to close the distance between us, but the weight of reality held me back. She was my stepmother. She was married to my father. This was impossible. But then she spoke. Her voice barely a whisper, trembling with something raw and honest. I see you, Ava. I see how hard you're trying to hold it together. And she hesitated, her hand tightening around mine. I feel it too. My heart stopped. Was she saying what I thought she was saying? The world seemed to tilt on its axis, everything I thought I knew shifting beneath my feet. Before I could ask, before I could breathe, the front door slammed open, and my father's voice cut through the moment like a blade. Elena, Ava, I'm home. She pulled her hand away instantly, her face transforming into a mask of composure, but I saw the flicker of fear in her eyes. We had been caught doing nothing wrong, and yet everything felt exposed. Dinner continued with my father oblivious to the tension crackling between Elena and me. He talked about his business deal, about clients and contracts, his words washing over me like meaningless noise. I couldn't eat. My mind was spinning in circles. Elena felt something too. What did that mean? What could it possibly mean? That night, I found a note slipped under my bedroom door, written in her neat, careful handwriting. Meet me in the backyard tomorrow night. We need to talk. My heart raced as I read it, a mix of hope and dread settling in my chest like stones. Whatever was happening between us, it was about to change everything. The backyard was a sanctuary under the stars, the fairy lights glowing like tiny beacons of hope against the darkness. I found Elena on the swing, her silhouette soft against the night sky. My heart pounded as I approached, the note burning a hole in my pocket. This was the moment. We'd either face what was between us or let it slip away forever. Ava, she said as I sat beside her, her voice trembling in a way I'd never heard before. I shouldn't have written that note. I shouldn't have said anything. Then why did you? I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. She looked at me, and even in the dim light, I could see her eyes glistening with unshed tears. Because I'm tired of pretending. I'm tired of hiding who I am, who I've always been. And when I'm with you, she paused, her breath catching, I feel alive again. Her words broke something in me, a dam I'd built to keep my feelings at bay. I reached for her hand, and this time, she didn't pull away. Her fingers intertwined with mine. Warm, and real, and right. Elena, I'm scared, I whispered. I don't know what this is, but I know I don't want to lose it. I don't want to lose you. She squeezed my hand, her touch grounding me in the moment. I'm scared too. This isn't simple. It's not safe. But I can't stop feeling it, Ava. I've tried. The world seemed to hold its breath as we sat there, hands entwined, the swing creaking softly beneath us. I wanted to kiss her, to erase the distance between us, to make this real. But the weight of our reality loomed large, my father, her marriage, the life we'd built around this impossible situation. Instead, we talked. She told me about Clara, about the love they'd shared in secret when she was young, about stolen moments and whispered promises, about the pain of letting her go because the world wasn't ready for their love, about choosing a safe life with my father, thinking she could bury who she really was. I told her about Sarah, about the fear of never being enough for anyone, about feeling like I was always hiding parts of myself, even in relationships that were supposed to be safe, about the way Elena made me feel seen in a way I never had before, like she could look past all my walls and still choose to stay. The night stretched on, the stars above us bearing witness to our confessions. When the air grew colder, she draped a blanket over us, her arm lingering around my shoulders. It wasn't a kiss, but it was something more, a promise, a possibility, a choice we were making together. We can't do this, she said finally, her voice breaking. Not now, not like this. I know, I said, even though my heart screamed otherwise. We sat in silence, the weight of our choices pressing down on us like the sky itself. That night, As I lay in bed later, I realized that love wasn't just about desire. It was about courage, about choosing to fight for what mattered, even when the world said it was wrong. The days after that night were a delicate dance of avoidance and yearning. Elena and I moved through the house like ghosts, careful not to touch, not to linger too long in each other's gaze. But the truth was out there between us, and there was no going back. My father's presence made everything worse. His indifference to Elena, his constant focus on work and money and status, only deepened my resentment. I wanted to scream at him, to tell him he didn't deserve her, that he'd never really seen her. But I kept my silence, swallowing my anger like bitter medicine. Instead, I poured my energy into my final weeks at Yale, trying to outrun my feelings. But love, I learned, doesn't let you run forever. It follows you, catches up to you, demands to be acknowledged. I was in the middle of studying for my final exams when my phone buzzed. A text from Elena. "Can you come home this weekend? I need to talk to you." My stomach twisted with anxiety and hope. I made the drive back to Connecticut in a daze, my mind racing through 1,000 possibilities, each one more terrifying than the last. When I arrived, the house was quiet. My father's car was gone, another trip, Elena told me when I found her in the kitchen. She looked different somehow. Her eyes were red, like she'd been crying, but there was also a strength in her posture I hadn't seen before. "Ava," she said, her voice urgent, cutting through the silence like a knife. "I'm leaving him." I froze, the words not quite registering. "What?" "I can't keep living a lie," she said, her eyes fierce with determination. "I've spent too long hiding who I am, pretending to be someone I'm not. I'm filing for divorce." My heart soared and sank at the same time, pulled in opposite directions. "What about us?" I asked, the question spilling out before I could stop it. She stepped closer, her hand reaching up to brush my cheek with a tenderness that made my breath catch. "I don't know what we are, Ava. I don't know what we can be, but I know I want to find out, not as your stepmother, but as me, as Elena." The words were a gift, a risk, a beginning. We didn't kiss. Not then. The moment felt too fragile, too precious to rush. But the promise of it hung between us like something sacred. "This won't be easy," I said, my voice shaking. "People will talk. My father will be furious. The world won't understand." "I know," she said, and I could see the fear in her eyes, mixed with something stronger resolve. "But I'm done living for other people's approval. I'm done being afraid." Over the next weeks, I watched Elena transform. She moved out, renting a small apartment in town. My father was furious, just as I'd predicted. He called me, demanding explanations, accusing Elena of abandoning the family. I listened to his anger and realized how little he'd ever known her, how little he'd ever tried. When I visited Elena's new apartment for the first time, I was struck by how different it felt from the house. It was small, cozy, filled with her books and her music, and her presence. It felt like her, authentic, warm, alive. "It's not much," she said, watching me look around. "But it's mine. It's perfect," I told her, and I meant it. We sat on her tiny balcony, drinking tea and watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. We talked about everything and nothing: my upcoming graduation, her plans to go back to school, the future that stretched before us like an open road. "I'm scared," I admitted as the light faded. "I'm scared this won't work, that we'll hurt each other, that the world will be too cruel." She took my hand, her thumb tracing circles on my palm. "I'm scared too. But I'd rather be scared and honest than safe and living a lie." That night, before I left, she walked me to my car. Under the streetlight, with the world quiet around us, she finally did what we'd both been waiting for. She kissed me. It was soft, tentative, like a question being asked. And when I kissed her back, it was an answer: yes, 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 to all of this, to the risk, and the fear, and the possibility. When we pulled apart, she was smiling, tears streaming down her face. "We'll figure this out," she whispered. "One day at a time." The most important night of my life wasn't the night we confessed our feelings. It was the night I watched Elena choose herself. Choose truth over comfort. Choose courage over fear. She taught me that love isn't just about passion or romance. It's about truth, about standing up for who you are, no matter the cost. It's about being brave enough to walk away from what's safe and reach for what's real. The months that followed weren't easy. My father stopped speaking to me for a while, unable to understand or accept what was happening. Some of our family friends turned their backs on both of us. There were whispers and judgment and people who thought we were wrong, broken, sinful. But there was also freedom. Elena and I took things slowly, carefully, building something real between us. We went on actual dates, coffee shops and bookstores and walks through parks where we could just be ourselves. We learned each other in ways we never could have before, without the weight of forbidden attraction hanging over us. I graduated from Yale in the spring, and Elena was there in the crowd, her smile brighter than the sun. When I walked across that stage, diploma in hand, I felt like I was finally becoming who I was always meant to be. After graduation, I moved into the city, got a job at a publishing house, started building my own life. Elena and I saw each other whenever we could, sometimes just for coffee, sometimes for entire weekends where we'd lose ourselves in conversation and laughter, and the simple joy of being together. We were still figuring things out, still navigating the complicated terrain of our relationship. Some days were harder than others. Some days, the weight of judgment felt too heavy to bear. But every touch, every glance, every quiet moment together was a step towards something real and true. One evening, about a year after Elena had left my father, we were walking along the beach at sunset. The waves crashed against the shore, and the sky was painted in brilliant shades of purple and gold. "Do you ever regret it?" I asked her. "Leaving everything behind?" She stopped walking and turned to face me, the wind catching her hair. "Not for a second," she said. "I regret all the years I spent being afraid. But this? Us? Never." She took my hands in hers, and I could feel the calluses on her palms from the pottery class she'd started taking. She was discovering herself, piece by piece, becoming more fully who she'd always been meant to be. "You saved my life, Ava," she said softly. "Not by being there, but by showing me it was okay to save myself." I pulled her close, wrapping my arms around her. "We saved each other," I whispered against her hair. And it was true. Elena had shown me what courage looked like, what it meant to choose truth over comfort. She'd taught me that love wasn't about perfection, it was about being brave enough to be imperfect, to be human, to be free. Standing there on that beach, with the waves singing their endless song and the sunset painting the world in impossible colors, I realized something profound. Love isn't about the easy moments or the safe choices. It's about the courage to be yourself, to stand with someone who sees you fully and chooses you anyway. It's about rainy nights and difficult conversations. It's about letting go of what doesn't serve you and reaching for what sets you free. It's about two women brave enough to love in a world that wasn't always ready for them, choosing each other again and again, one day at a time. Elena and I didn't have all the answers. We didn't know exactly what the future held, but we knew we'd face it together, not as stepmother and stepdaughter, but as two women who'd found something real in the most unexpected place. As the sun finally dipped below the horizon and the stars began to emerge, Elena kissed me again, and it felt like coming home. Love, I realized, wasn't about perfection or certainty, or even acceptance from the world around us. It was about the courage to be imperfect, to be uncertain, to be free. It was about choosing truth over comfort, choosing yourself over safety, choosing love, even when it wasn't easy. And as we walked back along the beach, hand in hand, I knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, we would face them together. Because that's what love is, not the absence of fear, but the courage to move forward despite it. Elena had taught me that the most important love story isn't the one the world approves of. It's the one that makes you brave enough to be yourself. Thank you for listening to my story, for letting me share the most important chapter of my life with you. If what Elena and I went through touched your heart, if our story reminded you that love is worth fighting for no matter what the world says, then please like this video and subscribe to Love Beyond Rules. Because I know somewhere out there, someone needs to hear that their love story matters too. Someone needs to know they're not alone in feeling what they feel. Someone needs the courage to choose themselves, just like Elena taught me to do. Hit that notification bell so you never miss another story. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. And remember, your truth is worth living, and your love is worth fighting for. I'll see you in the next story. Until then, stay brave, stay true, and keep loving beyond the rules. This is Ava, signing off.